Welcome to Insights, and again today we're going to focus on globalism, but this time what to do. In fact, why should we do anything? Because the Bible has already foretold, it has already prophesied that this is where things end up right before Jesus' second coming, because the Antichrist and plenty of his willing accomplices will preside over such a system. So if it's going to happen anyway, why not just get back to our typical routines of our daily lives and forget about the whole thing? Well, I think that would be a huge mistake, and I'm going to explain why. But first, most people would look at a couple key scriptures of how we even know that a global government, a global system is coming upon the earth before Jesus' second coming. And those two passages would be Daniel chapter 7, 4 beasts, especially as you focus on the fourth beast. And it's clear that Daniel chapter 7 is a chapter in the context of Jesus' second coming. Commonly misunderstood to be possibly reflecting Daniel 2 and part of Jesus' first coming. It's actually a second coming, and we know this because Daniel 7 verses 13 and 14 tell us, so right in the middle of the chapter, it tells us that one like a son of man is coming back on the clouds. That is not his first coming, that is his second coming. And so as we focus on that and the fourth beast in the last part of that chapter, which explains the fourth beast, we have a picture of a terrifying global system that is in play right before Jesus comes back. This same terrifying beast, it surfaces again in Revelation chapter 13. So those are a couple places, among others, that talk about this whole idea of globalism. Now, I want to just very briefly mention again that this is a topic that is taught in the Bible, meaning sovereign nations is taught in the Bible, the opposite of globalism. I want to put up on the screen right now some of those passages we've looked at in the past that clearly teach that God himself separated the nations. He had a great purpose for that in the past. He has a great purpose for that right now, according to Acts 17:26. And even on into the future, God has a great purpose for individual nations, not globalism, not this one world government that comes in under the Antichrist and his minions. Okay, so if we're all clear on this, now what do we do and why? We need to stand with God on this. That's fundamentally what we have to do. We can't ignore this topic of globalism any longer. It's becoming more and more part of our culture, more and more discussed on the news, amongst politicians, in the universities, elsewhere. And so God is calling us to stand with him. So we need to teach on this topic and have convictions ourselves for a lot of reasons. One of them being, as the scriptures reveal, that the primary means by which persecution will come to believers in the last days is through the system of globalism. So we don't want to be taken off guard as the body of Christ. We want to be able to know what's going on and why, and then be able to stand up in faith. Now, I don't want to neglect the younger generation in this. It's our generation's responsibility to teach the younger generation all things. And as this is being discussed, meaning globalism, more and more, even within the education system, and it's being discussed in broader culture more often, the younger generation is very susceptible to being fooled because they hear things like, well, if we have a global government and a global community, well, then we won't have war anymore, or 100 other problems will go away. And that's not true. When you concentrate power within just a few people at the top, which globalism would be the ultimate expression of doing that, then we increase evil and problems. So we got to help young people see this so that when they hear this coming, whether it's through the TV or the education system or wherever, that they are able to know the other side and know the truth. Now, both for this generation, meaning every age group, we also need to be fully aware of what's going on with globalism, because we are going to end up voting for people that promote globalism, inadvertently voting these people into office. And they're going to take this agenda further. Now, again, we know eventually this is going to happen anyway, but we're supposed to be salt and light right now. You know, I look at this last week, just a week and a half ago, both German Chancellor Angela Merkel and French President Emmanuel Macron, both of them gave speeches declaring the virtues of globalism and really chastising all of us that take the other position, which is, again, is sovereign nations. This is wide open. It's being debated on a daily basis, at least in some circles. So we need to be sure what we believe. We need to have our ears to hear and our eyes to see spiritually what the enemy is doing so we don't become his willing accomplices in a whole variety of areas, but I'm specifically talking about actually voting for people that are pushing this agenda. The vast majority of Christians I know have never thought about this topic and are completely unclear about where this is taught in the Bible and why it's so crucial that we see it today. Also, I want to remind us from another key passage that talks about the end times how important it is that we're salt and light in every area and stand up for what God's truth is, that we actually stand with him on globalism, meaning against globalism, and stand with him on every other topic. In Matthew 24, verse 11, it's an end times passage, and it's talking about that false prophets will come and mislead many. So just because it's prophesied that it's going to happen anyway, does that mean that we just go on with our daily lives and routine? Or do we stand up and speak the truth and hopefully expose false prophets, hopefully lead many into the truth that would have otherwise been misled by these false prophets? Well, of course, even though it was prophesied that would happen, we need to stand up and take the other position. Exact same thing with globalism versus sovereign nations. We need to stand up and be salt and light. So I hope that at least points you in the direction of a few reasons why we need to stand up, but also how to stand up, whether it's teaching in our church or preparing the next generation or even ourselves and how we vote. But we've got to be clear on this one. I look forward to being with you again next week on Insights.